There is someone who thinks about you in the middle of the night. Not in the way people casually think about others, the kind of thought that passes through the mind like a car on a highway. Whoa, this is different. This is the kind of thought that stops a person in the middle of whatever they're doing. While washing dishes, while driving, while pretending to watch something on TV. And suddenly just you, your face, a voice, something you once said that they never forgot. You may not know this. You probably don't. But somewhere right now there is someone carrying your name in a place they don't speak about out loud. I want to ask you something and I need you to answer honestly. Not to me but to yourself. Have you felt it lately? That strange, quiet pull toward someone. Not obsession. Not desperation. Something older than that. Something that feels less like wanting and more like remembering. If you felt something shift inside you just now, even slightly, I need you to stay with me. Because what I'm about to share with you wasn't meant to be explained. It was meant to be felt. And I think on some level you already know what's coming. There is a kind of silence that most people misread. They call it distance. They call it indifference. They call it moving on. But silence between two souls who were meant to find each other is not empty. Never was. It is one of the most loaded things in the human experience, full of everything that was almost said, everything that was swallowed back down, everything that lived in the space between a look and a word that never came. You know this silence. Maybe you've been living inside it for a while now. And here is what nobody tells you about that silence. It has a breaking point. Not because people give up. Not because time heals things in the way greeting cards suggest it does. But because there is a moment, and angels know this moment well, when the weight of not saying something becomes heavier than the fear of saying it. When staying quiet costs more than speaking. When the heart, after all its negotiations with pride and with pain, finally puts everything down and reaches out. That moment is closer than you think. I don't say that to comfort you. I say it because I've sat with enough stories, enough quiet confessions, enough letters that were never sent, to recognize the pattern. And the pattern is showing up around you right now in ways you may have dismissed as coincidence. The songs that find you. The dreams that leave a residue on your morning. The name that surfaces in your mind at the exact moment you were trying to think about something else entirely. These are not random. They are not your imagination running loose. They are signals, quiet, persistent, almost gentle, that something is shifting in the invisible architecture of your life. Angels don't announce themselves with thunder. They work in the language of repetition. In the language of feeling. In the pattern of things that keep returning to you no matter how many times you try to file them away under over or impossible. Or, I've already let that go. Have you really let it go? Or have you just learned to carry it more quietly? 'Cause there is a difference. A significant one. Letting something go feels like release, like setting down a heavy bag after a long walk. What most of us do instead is redistribution. We move the weight from one hand to the other. We reorganize the pain so it doesn't show as much. We become very good at appearing fine while something deep inside us remains unresolved, still waiting, still open. Like a question that hasn't received its answer yet. And that open question, that unresolved thing, is exactly what creates the energetic thread between two people who are not yet finished with each other. You feel it on your end as longing, or as an ache you can't fully name. They feel it on their end as guilt or restlessness, or a sudden and inexplicable urge to reach for their phone and stop halfway through, not knowing what they would even say. Both of you are feeling it. Just from different sides of the same silence. What the angels want you to understand today is this. The silence is not a wall. It was never a wall. It is a threshold. And thresholds exist for one reason only. To be crossed. Let me tell you something about fear that took me a long time to understand. Fear is not the opposite of love. Fear is what love turns into when it doesn't feel safe enough to be itself. When someone who cares deeply about you goes quiet, when they pull back, when they disappear into their own life and stop reaching, it is almost never because the feeling died. It is because the feeling became too large to hold without shaking. And some people, when they start to shake, go very still instead. You may have interpreted that stillness as rejection, as a door closing, as the answer you never wanted but somehow learned to accept. And in accepting it, you built something around your own heart. Not a wall exactly, but a careful arrangement. A way of living that works around the absence. A routine that fills the hours so the quiet doesn't get too loud. But here is what I need you to sit with for a moment. What if the stillness was never the answer? What if it was the question, unanswered, suspended in the air between you, waiting for one of you to have enough courage to disturb it? Fear does something very specific to people who feel deeply. It convinces them that protecting themselves from the possibility of loss is wiser than risking the possibility of love. And that logic sounds reasonable. Sounds like growth even. Like maturity. Like someone who has been through enough to know better. But underneath that reasonable surface, fear is doing something else entirely. It is keeping two people at exactly the distance that hurts the most. Close enough to feel the pull, far enough to maintain the illusion of safety. There is nothing safe about that distance. Anyone who has lived there knows this. The safety is a performance. The real experience is a low, constant ache that you get so used to you almost stop noticing it, until something breaks through. Season changing. A night that feels too quiet. And then it's back, as sharp as it ever was, reminding you that you never actually stopped feeling what you were pretending not to feel. I am not telling you this to reopen something painful. I'm telling you this because the angels have been watching this particular story, yours. And there is a movement happening beneath the surface that you cannot see from where you are standing. Something is softening in a place that was rigid for a long time. Something is shifting in someone who has been holding their ground so firmly they forgot what it felt like to simply reach out without calculating the cost. Fear has a shelf life. Most people don't know this. They treat their fears as permanent fixtures, as defining truths about who they are and what they deserve and what is possible for them. But fear is not a truth. It is a response. A deeply human, understandable response to pain that was real. And responses can change. They do change. Especially when the weight of what you are protecting yourself from becomes less than the weight of what you are protecting yourself against feeling. That tipping point, that quiet internal recalibration, is exactly what is happening right now in someone who matters to you. They are not the same person they were when the silence began. Neither are you. Time does not just pass. It works on people. It softens edges. It clarifies things that were once unbearably complicated. It has a way of returning people to the essential truth of what they feel, when all the noise and the pride and the fear have finally exhausted themselves. And what remains when all of that falls away is the original feeling. The one that was there before any of the hurt. Before any of the misunderstanding. Before the silence built itself into something that seemed permanent. That feeling does not die. Wait. And it is done waiting. I want to talk about the moments you almost talked yourself out of. You know the ones. The morning you woke up and felt, without any logical reason, that something was about to change. You laid there for a few seconds holding that feeling. And then the day started, and the coffee needed to be made, and the phone needed to be checked. And by noon you had filed that feeling under wishful thinking and moved on. But it stayed with you, didn't it? Not loudly. Just quietly present, like a candle in a room where all the windows are closed. Or the number you keep seeing. The song that came on at the exact moment you were thinking about them. The dream that left you unsettled in a way that had nothing to do with fear. It was more like recognition. Like your sleeping self knew something your waking self was still working up the courage to accept. Angels communicate through the cracks in your ordinary day. Not through dramatic appearances or unmistakable thunder. They slide their messages into the margins of your life. In the pause between one thought and the next. In the sudden inexplicable warmth you feel in your chest when nothing around you has changed. In the way a stranger's words land on you like they were meant specifically for you. In a conversation you weren't even part of. You have been receiving these messages. I know you have. Because you are here, listening to this. And people who have truly closed the chapter don't find themselves in spaces like this one. They move on completely, clean, decisive, forward. But you are here. And that means something is still alive in you that recognizes itself in what I'm saying. The question is not whether the signs are real. The question is what you have been doing with them. Most of us have been taught, quietly, persistently, by a world that values logic over intuition, to distrust the things we feel but cannot prove. So we develop this habit of double-checking our own perception. We feel something, and immediately we begin the cross-examination. Was that real or was I projecting? Was that a sign or just a coincidence? Am I holding on because something is genuinely there, or because I'm afraid of the alternative? And by the time we finish cross-examining, the moment has passed. The feeling has been argued away. And we are left standing in the very reasonable, very empty space we created for ourselves by being so careful not to be fooled. But here is what I have come to understand slowly through years of listening to the quiet rather than the noise. Intuition does not arrive with credentials, does not bring proof. It brings resonance. And resonance is something you feel in your body before your mind has a chance to approve or reject it. It is the slight lean forward when something is true, the inexplicable resistance when something is wrong, the stillness that comes over you when you are exactly where you are supposed to be. You have felt that resonance around this person, more than once, in moments when everything rational told you to look away. Something in you refused, not out of weakness, not out of inability to move forward, but because something real was pulling, and the realness of it was undeniable, even when you tried to deny it. The angels are not asking you to abandon your reason. They are asking you to stop using your reason as a weapon against your own knowing. There is a difference between discernment and self-betrayal. And spending months or years talking yourself out of something true, that is not wisdom. That is fear wearing the costume of wisdom. The signs were real. The feeling was real. And what is coming, what is already in motion, is real too. Something is about to break open. Not violently, not dramatically, but in the way that spring breaks open after a winter that went on just a little too long. Quietly. Inevitably, like something that was always going to happen, finally deciding that now is the time. There are people in our lives who love us in a language we were never taught to read. Not because they are cold, not because they don't feel, but because somewhere along the way, long before they ever met you, they learned that expressing what they feel was dangerous. That opening up led to being misunderstood. That reaching out led to being left. That saying the true thing out loud made them vulnerable in a way that had cost them before, deeply, in ways they still carry in places they don't show anyone. So they learned to love sideways. Through actions that were never explained. Through showing up in practical ways when what they really wanted was to show up in emotional ones. Through humor when they meant tenderness. Through distance when they meant I'm scared of how much this matters to me. Through silence when they meant everything. And you, on the receiving end of that sideways love, may have spent a long time wondering if you were imagining things. Wondering if what you felt between you was real or constructed. Wondering if you were the only one feeling it, which is one of the loneliest places a human being can occupy. To love someone and be genuinely uncertain whether the love travels both ways. I want to speak directly to that loneliness for a moment, because it deserves to be named. The loneliness of loving someone who doesn't yet know how to love you back in a language you can clearly hear. That is a specific kind of ache. It doesn't announce itself like grief does. Doesn't come in waves like loss does. It lives in the background of everything. In the subtext of conversations that almost went somewhere and then didn't. In the moments that felt significant and were never acknowledged as such. In the years of almost. But here is what I need you to understand about the person who loves you sideways. They know. On some level that lives beneath all their defenses and their careful management of feelings. They know exactly what they feel for you. They have always known. The knowing is not the problem. The expression is the problem. The bridge between the interior experience and the exterior word. That bridge was damaged long before you arrived. And they have been, in their own halting and imperfect way, trying to rebuild it. This is not an excuse for silence that has hurt you. I am not here to ask you to be endlessly patient with someone who cannot meet you. What I am here to tell you is that the silence was never indifference. Indifference is easy to recognize. It has a particular blankness to it, a lack of energy, a disengagement that you can feel like a room with no air in it. What you have felt is not that. What you have felt is charged, complicated, full. The silence between you has never been empty. It has been overfull, with things that were real and present and overwhelming enough to require containment. And containment has its limits. This is the truth that angels carry into this moment with great gentleness. The things we contain do not disappear. They mature. They develop pressure. They find their way toward expression in the end, because the human heart was not designed to hold love indefinitely without releasing it somewhere. It was not built for permanent silence. It was built for connection, for the relief of finally saying the true thing to the right person and watching their face when they understand. That relief is coming, for both of you, not as a dramatic declaration in some cinematic moment, but as something simpler and more real than that. A conversation that begins differently than the ones before it. A message sent at an hour when pride usually wins and this time it doesn't. A moment of eye contact that holds a second longer than it needs to and says everything the mouth hasn't been able to say yet. They have been practicing, in the privacy of their own mind, what they want to say to you. You may not know this, but the rehearsal has been happening. The preparation has been quiet, interior, private, the way all the most important human preparations are. And something about where they are right now, in their life, in their understanding of themselves and of time and of what actually matters, something has reached a threshold. The words that were never said are getting ready to arrive. Not perfectly. Not in the way you may have scripted it in your most hopeful moments. But honestly. And honestly, when it finally comes, is always more powerful than perfectly. I want to shift something here. Because this conversation has been moving toward someone else. Their feelings, their silence, their preparation to reach out. And all of that is real and worth sitting with. But I need to turn the light in a different direction for a moment. I need to turn it toward you. Not toward who you are waiting for, but toward who you have become while waiting. Because something happened to you during this silence that I don't think you have fully given yourself credit for. You did not collapse. You did not disappear into bitterness, though you had every right to. You did not become someone who closes off entirely, though that would have been the easier choice. You kept feeling. You kept showing up to your own life. You kept moving forward even on the days when forward felt like a direction that had nothing waiting in it. That is not a small thing. In fact, it is everything. There is a version of us that exists before a great love enters our life. And there is a version that exists after that love has tested us, stretched us, been complicated and sometimes painful. And the difference between those two versions is not just experience. It is depth. It is the particular kind of wisdom that can only be earned through living something all the way through, not just reading about it or observing it from a safe distance. You are not the same person you were when this story began. I need you to hear that. Not as a consolation. Not as a way of saying the pain was worth it, because that is not mine to say. But as a simple and honest observation. You have grown in ways that are only visible from the inside. In the way you handle disappointment now. In the way you know yourself more clearly. In the way you have learned, slowly and sometimes reluctantly, what you will no longer accept and what you will no longer pretend not to need. That clarity, that hard-won, honest clarity about who you are and what you need, is not baggage. It is the most valuable thing you are bringing into what is coming next. Because love that arrives when you are unclear about yourself tends to repeat old patterns. It tends to fall into familiar shapes that feel comfortable precisely because they are familiar, even when familiar means painful. But love that arrives when you know yourself, when you have done the quiet, unglamorous work of understanding your own heart, that love has somewhere solid to land. And you have been doing that work. Even on the days when it didn't feel like work. Even on the days when it just felt like surviving. Even on the days when you sat with a silence and wondered if this was simply what your life was going to be. Quiet in this particular way, incomplete in this particular place. The angels see what you cannot see from inside your own story. They see the whole arc. And what they are showing me today, what I feel compelled to share with you because it matters, is that the preparation has been happening on both sides of this silence simultaneously. While that person has been finding their way back to honesty, you have been finding your way back to yourself. And those two movements, happening separately, invisibly, quietly, are about to intersect. That intersection is not a coincidence. It is a convergence. Two people arriving at the same threshold from different directions, both carrying something they didn't have before, both Changed enough to make something possible that wasn't possible before. Not because the love is new, but because the people are. I want you to consider something. The relationship that is returning to you, if you allow yourself to truly receive it, will not look like what you lost. It will not be a restoration of something old. It will be something that carries the memory of what came before but belongs entirely to who you both are now. And who you both are now is more capable of real intimacy, real honesty, real presence than either of you were when this began. That is what the silence was building toward. Not punishment, not delay for its own sake, but the necessary time for two people to become who they needed to be before they could truly meet each other. You are almost there. Both of you. The ground beneath this silence is shifting. And when it finally opens, when the first real word crosses the space that has been so carefully maintained between you, you will recognize it not as something new arriving but as something true returning. And you will be ready. 'Cause you already are. Before I continue, I want to pause here for just a moment. If you have been with me this far, through everything we have talked about today, through the silence and the fear and the signs and the waiting and the growing, I want you to know that means something. Not everyone stays. Not everyone is willing to sit with the deeper things. And the fact that you are still here tells me that what we are exploring today is touching something real in you. Something that needed to be touched. So I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel and join us every day. 'Cause this is what we do here, we go beneath the surface. We talk about the things that matter in the language they deserve. If this reached you today, there is more waiting for you here. Subscribe, turn on the notification, and come back tomorrow. Bring someone with you who needs to hear this too. And if this video moved something in you, leave a comment below. Tell me where you are in your story right now. I read them. More than you know. Now let me come back to you. Because we are standing at the most important part of everything I have shared today. And I don't want you to miss it. There is a moment, and it arrives differently for everyone, but it always arrives, when a person stops negotiating with their own heart. When the internal debate that has been running for months, sometimes years, finally goes quiet. Not because the fear disappeared, but because something more powerful than the fear showed up and simply took its place. Call it clarity. Call it exhaustion with the alternative. Call it grace. The angels call it readiness. That moment of readiness is not announced. It doesn't come with preparation or warning. It arrives in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, or at 3 in the morning when the house is completely still, or in the middle of a conversation about something entirely unrelated when a feeling surfaces so clearly and so completely that there is simply no more room left for pretending it isn't there. And in that moment, that unguarded, unplanned, quietly revolutionary moment, people do the thing they have been circling for so long. They reach out. They say the name. They send the message they have written and deleted 100 times. They make the call they have been rehearsing in the shower and in the car and in every quiet space where honesty is easier than performance. That moment is coming. I don't know if it will be today or this week or this month. The angels don't work on human calendars. They work on the calendar of readiness, which moves according to interior weather rather than external time. But it is closer than the silence has made it feel. It is closer than your patience has been able to fully believe. It is gathering itself right now in someone who matters to you, in the quiet accumulation of all the things they have been unwilling to keep carrying alone. And when it arrives, when that reaching out finally happens, I need you to be present for it. Not defended. Not performing indifference you don't actually feel. Not protecting yourself so carefully that the thing you have been waiting for cannot actually land. But present. Willing to receive something imperfect and honest and real. Because what is coming is not a fairy tale. It is something better than that. It is two people, changed by time and by distance and by the particular education that only longing can provide, finally choosing each other with full awareness of what that choice means. Choosing each other not from innocence but from knowledge. Not from the beginning but from somewhere deeper. From the middle of the story where love is not new but it is chosen. Again. Deliberately. With eyes open. That kind of love, the chosen kind, the returning kind, the kind that has survived its own silence and come back anyway. That is the kind that holds. That is. The kind that knows what it is and does not take itself for granted. That is the kind that the angels have been quietly, patiently, faithfully tending toward all this time. You are almost at the threshold. Stay open. Stay soft in the places that matter. Let what is coming find you the way you truly are. Not the version of you that learned to need nothing, but the version that is willing, finally, to need this. There is something I want to leave you with. Not a conclusion exactly. More like a door left slightly open. Everything we have walked through today. The silence, the fear, the signs you almost dismissed, the love that was always there but never fully spoken, the version of yourself that was quietly being built while you waited. None of it was accidental. Not the waiting. Not the pain of it. Not even the uncertainty that made some mornings harder than they needed to be. There is a kind of order to things that doesn't reveal itself while you are inside it. It only becomes visible later, when you are standing on the other side of something you survived, looking back at the shape of it. And the shape, when you can finally see it whole, is never what you expected. It is always more deliberate than it appeared. More precise. More merciful even in the places where it hurt. You have been inside something. A chapter that felt, at times, like it had no ending. Like the silence was simply the new permanent. Like the story had stalled in a place that was neither here nor there. Not over, not resolved, just suspended in a kind of emotional amber that preserved everything exactly as it was while the world around it kept moving. But amber eventually gives way. Everything that is suspended eventually finds its release. And what has been preserved inside it, what has been kept intact through all the waiting, emerges unchanged in its essence. Still true. Still warm. Still exactly what it was before the stillness set in. That is what love does when it is real. It does not deteriorate in silence. Concentrates. It becomes more itself. It waits with a patience that has nothing to do with passivity and everything to do with certainty. The deep, unargued certainty of something that knows what it is and knows, without needing to be told, that it belongs somewhere specific. Belongs with you. And I want you to sit with that for a moment without immediately reaching for a reason to doubt it. Without the cross-examination. Without the careful list of reasons why maybe it won't work out, why maybe you are reading too much into things, why maybe it is wiser to expect nothing and be pleasantly surprised. Just sit with it. The possibility that you are loved. That someone right now, in the private country of their own heart, is preparing to say what they have never quite found the courage to say. That the silence was not the end of something. That it was the last long breath before the speaking begins. The angels have been in this with you. Not watching from a distance the way we imagine divine things watch. Detached, observing, uninvolved. Close. In the small moments. In the feeling that came over you for no reason on an ordinary afternoon. In the dream that left something behind. In the song. In the pause. In the inexplicable sense, arriving sometimes without warning, that you are not as alone in this as the silence has made you feel. You were never as alone in this as it felt. And what is coming, what is already in motion in ways neither of you can fully see yet, is not a rescue. It is not the happy ending that makes everything before it irrelevant. It is simply the next true thing. The honest thing. The thing that has been waiting, patiently and without resentment, for both of you to be ready to receive it. Be ready. Not by bracing yourself. Not by lowering your expectations so the landing is softer. But by being genuinely, quietly, fully open to the possibility that what you feel is real, what you have been sensing is accurate, and what is coming is worthy of you exactly as you are right now. Not as you were, not as you are still becoming, but as you are. Today. In this moment. With everything you have lived and everything you are still carrying and everything you have quietly, stubbornly, beautifully refused to stop believing in. That refusal. That quiet insistence on keeping the door open even when every reasonable voice told you to close it, was never foolishness. It was faith. If this video touched something real in you today, I want to ask you to do something for me. Share it with 5 people. Not because the numbers matter, but because somewhere in your life there is someone sitting inside their own silence, feeling alone in it, and they need to hear that what they are carrying is not forgotten. That the angels see it. That it is moving toward something. Share this with them. Let it find who it needs to find. And before you go, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already and leave me a comment below. Not a polite one. Sincere one. Tell me where this landed for you. Tell me what you are still waiting for. And if there is something you want us to explore together next, a question you carry, a silence you are still sitting inside, leave it in the comments. Your next video might already be written in what you share. Thank you for being here today. For staying. For listening all the way to the end. That too was never an accident.